It's interesting, we talk about the obsessives who are attracted to this film and the fact that it bears so many different readings and watchings. Why do you think The Shining itself is one of those films that has such an enduring attraction to both the obsessive and to the mainstream popular audience? What is it about it that can attract both
It's
sectors?
very well made. It's carefully made. It's not boring. And it stimulates thought. I think this is what films do if you want them to last and to have, the film delivers to an audience what the audience comes, buys the ticket and wants to see. And that's why. It didn't in the beginning. That's so interesting. But it did after a while.
I think it's because there's no easy answer to it.
Okay, fine.
It's like, some mystery type movies you go and see, and then you come out and you have passed everything. You got it. You're puzzled for 45 minutes, and then you see all the tumblers working, and you come out satisfied because you know the answer. The Shining isn't like that at all, is it? It's like every time you see it, you come out with a different answer.
You understand it less.
Yeah, that's right, yeah. And the same's true of 2001, which I've been going back to since 1968, yeah. And you sort of realize, the whole point is that last is beyond the infinite, it's beyond your understanding.
The brilliant thing that he does with The Shining, or with this haunted house story, is he really gives you insight to the construct of the family. And actually, I think this family and the nature of family relationships in his films generally are fascinating and make it feel like it's more than just a genre movie, but there's a psychological integrity.
I'm not happy with more than just a genre movie as a term, as a writer. I feel that either all films are genre films or no films are genre films, and that it's possible to find profundity in ghost stories or westerns or war films, just as it's possible to find banality in art movies or literary efforts. But that comes from a lifetime of suffering, so it may well not be entirely relevant here.
But if we move on from the definition of genre and we look at the nature of the way in which he explores family dynamics in all of his films, what is it that's particular about Kubrick's insight into the family or the American family in this film that's so significant?
Well, in this film, the family really is very cynically observed. They're all a bit strange, except the mother. The mother is the only person in the whole film who is normal. She's a victim. She fights for her boy. The boy also is a bit funny, and the father is completely. Look, he types pages and pages and pages for weeks the same sentence. He doesn't realize that he's completely nuts.
He's furious from the beginning, though, isn't he? I was rewatching The Shining the other day, and I was really surprised how nuts Jack is from the first frame. It's not like it's a descent into hell. He starts off extremely angry and wants to murder them when he's in the car, driving out there, and he's just like going, "I can't wait to get there and kill them all." It's and I remembered it as some kind of thing where it carefully built a psychological. But no, it's just straight in there, and then he tries to kill him.
The people who've talked about the Western overtones, as you did earlier, talk about the Indian graveyard thing, which actually I because it's in Poltergeist and in loads of other films, it's sort of hokey. To me, the most significant Western reference in it is to the Donner Party, which is the first massacre that's talked about in the film. The thing about the Donner Party is they ate each other, and that seems to me is where we're going with this. It's the idea that the family will eat each other in the end. Yeah.
But there is we have not yet alluded to a very important character. It's Halloran. Mm-hmm. The fact that, I think the film is a real criticism of, I wouldn't say it's the reason why maybe American critics dislike the film so strongly, but it's a very strong criticism of the workaholic ideology in America, that Jack is, of course he does not, as you say, he repeats the same sentence, but still, it's the work which is the important thing. He doesn't pay attention to his family, to his child, to his wife, to nothing. It's working, working, working. I have to finish the big American novel. He's going to write the big American novel. So this obsession with work is at the center of the WASP civilization. And whom do we have in confronting him? We have the black man. It's really Romney versus Obama, because Halloran is yes, he can, you know. Yeah. Halloran can. He has The Shining.
Obama
I mean,
didn't
yeah.
22 years on.
Yes, 30 years later, Halloran wins, because I mean, when he describes the food in the, you know, to the little boy, he's full of sensuality. He enjoys life. He can describe every food that there is, you know, in the fridge. That you can, and even the end, he says, you want an ice cream? And at the end, the father becomes an ice cream at the end in the labyrinth, you know. He's totally frozen. So Halloran, like the child and the black man are in relation to something basic, to something mythical, to something spiritual. And the poor Jack is a totally materialistic character, totally obsessed with his work and nothing else. I think it's a very strong criticism. And it's also a criticism of, you are right to point out, because for a long time, Kubrick was identified with violence. Of course, there is violence in his couples, in his families. There is violence in Lolita. There is violence in Barry Lyndon. There is violence in Eyes Wide Shut. But I think the family is really a very important thread all through. As much as war, it's a different kind of war. It's a couples war, but I think nobody thought so really during his lifetime. It was not so much emphasized the importance of the triangular family relationship that you find in Lolita, that you find in Barry Lyndon with more than a triangle, that you find in The Shining. It's very central to his preoccupations, I think.
Well, that's nicely set up Kim's clip, which is the all work and no play. Yeah. I don't know if there's anything you want to add before we look at it.
I'll just say that I picked this probably because I'm a writer, and I get the feel whenever I'm working on a project that everybody else in the world assumes this is what I'm doing.
How do you like it? How do you like it?
I think the thing I like most about that is that there are mistakes in it. That it actually has been typed out for 300 pages or whatever, and it's not perfect. There are
this
moments
was before word processor.
Yeah, I know.
You know?
Yeah.
Margaret Adams typed it, our precious secretary, and she was just, typing away, and everything had to look a little bit different.
Yeah,
no.
But also it is one of those great moments in filmmaking. The notion that from here on it's broken. There is no way back from this. You can no longer pretend that these people can ever get on again. I also like his reaction. So do you like it?
Yeah.
You know,
How do you like
which
it?
is every every writer. Yeah, and that whole. There is a kind of reading of The Shining where it's like the very, very special episode of I Love Lucy where Desi finally snaps and picks up the baseball bat. Because his wife has pried just that one too many times into the creative business that he knows is beyond her. But I don't know. Maybe it is a great book. Maybe
It's a
what he's got
beautiful
in his
poem,
head
maybe.
is would be
Modern poem.
perfect. Yeah. And certainly I find it. It is something that's in King's novel too, because I think King is a very good writer about writing. As a novelist, I've always found that scene in Misery where she makes him burn the only copy of his manuscript worse than the scene where she breaks his feet, because you sort of know what effort has gone into that, the effort it takes just to write that amount of typing. And actually my first books were written on a typewriter exactly like that. And I still remember the physical effort it takes to write 200-300 pages on one of those big old things. And so it's always been a moment that I've found rather special. And it does capture that absolute knife edge between being very funny and very scary.
I mean, for me, it's one of the scariest scenes. I mean, I think and the thing about it is that he's obviously snapped and he doesn't know.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that, again, with different readings of The Shining, that I had a very different feeling about The Shining after I'd had a kid. Not I didn't personally give birth to it, but became a father, should I say. And I think that's for me, one of the central horrors of the movie is with the family unit where one of them goes nuts and doesn't know, and then is going to attack the others but still loves them.
Yeah.
And I think that's what and that moment, like you say, he's kind of written this thing, and he kind of believes that it's good, but he's seeing something else on the page, and he's so far gone that he's properly broken. She understands that then, and then it's all, it's only going to end badly.
Yeah. Stephen King said he wrote it because he was giving his son a piggyback, and his son peed on him. After a really, really bad day, and he said, I had a choice. I could either murder the kid or write The Shining. I also actually...
Did he write Tommy Knockers instead, though?
He did have it. Oddly enough, I also now know Joe, the kid, who's grown up and is a writer in his own right, and is now has a very complicated attitude to this film, I imagine, and or the various iterations of it.
I think one of the complexities of the film is that our relationship to Jack is very complex, because we cannot really condemn him, and because he's also a victim. And therefore there is an ambivalence to, and I think this is true of all Kubrick's movies. It's why it was always so controversial for Americans about his work, because he does not at all follow the Hollywood tradition. Of course, he's a great showman. He's a man who makes spectacular movies with a lot of action and bravura sequences and so on. There is no doubt about that. But at the same time, there is no identification as you have with the great Hollywood films. If you see a Spielberg movie, you identified with Harrison Ford. If you see a John Ford movie, you are with John Wayne. If you identified all the time in most American films, especially the classical cinema or the film that Spielberg does, which are in the tradition, and also Lucas. Whereas in Kubrick, you never identify with the character. There is always a kind of distanciation. You are moved, you laugh, you are frightened, etc. You feel a lot of emotions, but there is always this kind of distance that you have towards the characters. I don't identify with Barry Lyndon. I mean, you don't identify with Alex. I mean, you are against Alex at the beginning, and the second part you are with Alex because he's a victim. You are on the side of the victim, but you are, and this is also something very important about Kubrick, is that he's always on the side of the underdog. He's always on the side of the oppressed. And at the end of the film, when he's frozen in the labyrinth, you pity him. There is a feeling of pity, like in a Greek tragedy. Even if he's a monster, at the same time he's a victim. And he's always, I mean, when people, people say to me in the past, now it's okay, but they said, but Kubrick is so cold, he's so misanthropic. It's absolutely untrue, because if you take right from Path of Glory, the 3 people who are shot, the 3 victims, if you take A Clockwork Orange, you have this reversal. If you take Barry Lyndon, he's on the side of Lady Lyndon. If you take Full Metal Jacket, he's with the obese boy who is being beaten by his friends. And who murders but he's always on the side of the victim. I mean, always. And that's characteristic, and it makes the film very complex, because you don't have one attitude towards the centerpiece.
I can only talk from my own perspective, and when I look at something like The Shining, it kind of pushed me forward to think more about structurally about filmmaking and how a movie would. It's not necessarily about a narrative, and it's a kind of system for holding information. I think that's been one of the biggest things that that's come across to me, and also just to not take things on face value and to look deeper into movies, and and oftentimes it's not necessarily the movie's fault that I don't understand it. It's sometimes it's mine, but yeah, I mean, it's difficult with Kubrick stuff, because I don't really see. There's little bits of influence here and there, but it's so difficult and so particular, his filmmaking. For my money, it doesn't really seem to. We're talking about genre. It's like Kubrick is a genre, and there's nothing that. People kind of try and make Kubrick-y type films, but they don't understand it, because it's in the unique thinking of the man. You can do tracking shots down corridors, and you can have symmetrical framing and stuff, and good luck, but it's not Kubrick, is it?
I think he has no predecessor, really. I mean, you can see some directors where they come from. There is no predecessor, and there is no inheritor, really. I agree absolutely.